Good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Harrisonburg. My name is Braden Hoover, president for this Rotary year. Let's start out as we always do with the recitation of the four-way test. Please join me in the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Today's song is led by Ash Heatwall singing My Country 'Tis of Thee. I see my father's died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountain let feet of wing. Now let's turn to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today's invocation is by Paul Lehman. Thank you very much. You may be seated. I didn't note any guests here today, but if we have any guests and you're accompanied by a Rotarian, please. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Michael. A couple of family of Rotary announcements. Rotarian Matt Heatwall welcomed their third boy to their family on Sunday morning. Both Lydia, yeah, let's give them a hand. Both Lydia, who is a Rotarian in the Tuesday Club, and Taylor Matthew are doing really well. So if you see them, congratulate them on their third boy. Any other family of Rotary announcements for the greater good of the group? Okay, a couple of regular announcements. Yeah, John. I have not heard an update on her, but thank you for. I'll write back to Bill and see how the surgery went, and I'll send an email out to everybody. Yeah, thank you. Good question. Any other thoughts or family of Rotary announcements? Okay, a couple of regular announcements. District Conference, as I've been mentioning the last couple of weeks, is April 1 through 3 at Hotel Roanoke. If you register for that, the club will reimburse you for it. So please be in touch with John Rosenberger or myself if that is something that interests you, and we'll make sure that you get reimbursed for the registration for District Conference. As you can probably tell from some of us today, the board moved to a mask optional mandate for the foreseeable future. So please feel comfortable to continue wearing masks, but otherwise you do not need to here in Rotary. We'll keep you updated as we continue to monitor the situation, but for the time being, you don't have to wear any masks. A reminder that board nominations are April 11th. We've already started shoulder tapping, but if you are interested in that of your own free will, please let Wayne or I know, and we'll get you signed up for that. The board also decided today to do something a little different with R85 members. Instead of paying at the door, you can get billed automatically the quarter after you attend. So want to make that easier both for you and for John as he's doing our treasuring. And that's it. Any other announcements? John? Oh, good. Thank you, John, for that update. Appreciate that. Yeah, keep Susan in your thoughts and prayers. Any other announcements? Okay, I'm happy to turn it over to President-elect Wayne to introduce our speaker today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited again to be able to announce another speaker that I'm excited to hear share with us today. And again, with my poor eyesight, I am forced to read some of these things, and I don't always do it well, so bear with me. But Franklin Baer is an international health systems specialist. He has degrees from Johns Hopkins and Tulane. He began his career with his wife, Retha, as volunteers for MCC 7 years in Congo. He later managed a national project for USAID and the Ministry of Health to decentralize Congo's health system in collaboration with faith-based hospitals. In 1991, the Bears had to evacuate from Congo due to political unrest. As a result, they parachuted into Harrisonburg so their 3 children could attend EMHS. For the past 30 years, Franklin has worked as an independent consultant to build and rebuild primary health care systems in more than 30 different countries around the world. Now that he's mostly retired, but continues to assist colleagues in DR Congo with their continuing efforts to achieve health care for all and by all. So please join me in welcoming Franklin Baer.
I realized this morning, as I was finalizing this presentation, that this is 2022. It was exactly 50 years ago that Retha and I set out for Congo. So I added that to the title, 50 years of Congo, healthcare, and hermit crabs. I grew up in Morgansville, Maryland. I was the youngest of 5 children. The oldest, Bonnie, who is Bonnie Zook. Some of you might know her. She lives here in Harrisonburg with her husband, Gordon Zook. My brother, Larry, is at VMRC, lives at VMRC. And here I am. I was a cute little guy. An interesting thing about Washington County, Maryland, where I live, is that it was one of the test counties for television in schools. And from 2nd grade onward, there was always a television set in our classroom. I grew up, it was a closed circuit system, so they had a staff of teachers. And what made that special for me was that Professor Proton, everybody know who Professor Proton is, or Dr. Nye, the science guy, was Alan J. Martin. He was my Sunday school teacher, but he was this TV star. He really was a mentor to me. And in 1964, I was 14, he and his family took off to Nigeria for 2 years to help test the capability of developing using TV in education in Nigeria. And they went away for 2 years. And I remember, I was attending Northside Mennonite Church, is where my family attended. And I remember shaking my head and saying, good grief, who could go to Africa for 2 years? It's an age. Famous last words. So I ended up spending most of 50 years in and out of Africa. My parents are Amos and Hazel Baer, in case that rings a bell for anyone. After high school, I attended Goshen College. Anybody? Any Goshen grad? Good. I was kind of nervous and nerdish. I went there to study biology, so I was looking forward to the science courses, but also open to the liberal arts courses. And at Goshen, they went by the name of Roy Umble and Mary Kay Boyer. On the science side, my mentor I had two, was Frank Bishop. And I sometimes there are words from professors that stick with you. His word to me in a botany class was take a close look. Look very closely. And so as part of that botany class, I took a microscope and started looking closely at a flower. And I was blown away by the art of the microscopic view of a flower. The other professor that mentored me, and I worked for both of these professors as their assistants while I was at Goshen, was Jonathan Roth. And during a marine biology course, on an evening on the beach around the fireside, he picked up a shell and said, "Learn to think like a hermit crab. Don't get fooled by imitations when you're selecting your shell. Don't select a shell that's too small or that's too large for you. And always, always be on the lookout for a better shell." And that's what I build this presentation around. Our first shell was when Retha and I walked down the aisle in July of 1972. A week later, we were at MCC orientation on our way to Congo. That was an easy way of avoiding having to set up housekeeping in the United States after we got married. Congo is known by many names. Some of you might know it by the old name of Belgian Congo. It became independent as the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1960. For 25 years, when Mobutu was dictator of Congo, dictator and president, he called it Zaire. It then reverted back to Democratic Republic of Congo in 1997 and remains that. It's also often called DR Congo, or I'll just simply refer to it as Congo. I mention that because right next door to DR Congo, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, there is the Republic of Congo. Two countries side by side with almost the same name. I'm talking about the big red one, not the little blue one. Congo is huge. It's as big as the United States east of the Mississippi. And here you see all of the paved infrastructure of Congo. That's how many paved roads there are. There's probably more paved roads, I'm sure there is, in Rockingham County than there is in the whole country of Congo. And that's a tremendous obstacle to doing any kind of health work in Congo. How do you get vaccinations from point A to point B? The secret is you follow the missionaries, use their refrigerators, or you follow the beer trucks and use their refrigerators for your vaccination. Congo is big. It has other big things in it, like Dikembe Mutombo. Congo has more than 200 distinct languages in it. There are three main, what we call local languages, Kituba, Chiluba, Swahili, Lingala, four of them. But then French is the overall language for education. Congo is rich in natural resources, one of the richest countries in the world for cobalt, copper, coffee, crude oil, cadmium, coltan, that's what goes into your cell phones, and carats. That's carats of diamonds and carats of gold. Unfortunately, Congo is also full of conflicts and corruption. And as a result of that, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. The average income of less than $400 per year. But it has a lot of beautiful people. We didn't go directly to Congo because Congo is French-speaking. We needed to speak French. I was going as a teacher. My wife was going to work as a nurse. And so we had to spend a year in Europe on a honeymoon, extended honeymoon, we called it, to learn French in a little village in southern France called Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. And then we went to Antwerp, Belgium, so that my wife could take a 4-month course in tropical medicine. In order to be certified to work as a nurse in Congo, she had to take that course. So the thing about Antwerp is they don't speak French in Antwerp. It's Flemish speaking. And I was trying to learn French. So someone suggested, well, why don't you take the course with your wife? So I did. And between my biology and her medicine, we got through this very graduate level course in tropical medicine. And that is what really caught my interest and directed my career to become a specialist in tropical diseases and international health. We finally did get to Congo, where we worked at a Presbyterian mission station. And Rita worked primarily in the maternity as a midwife. And I taught, because I was a biology major, I naturally ended up teaching physics and art for 2 years. That's how things go with Mennonite Central Committee sometimes. And along the way, we had a little bundle of joy arrive, Joshua Kalubi Baer. At the end of our term in Congo, we had a briefing with the MCC, and they asked us about whether we'd might want to join MCC for another term of service. And I said, maybe, but I'd first like to do some graduate studies in tropical medicine. And they said, okay, we got a deal for you. We'll provide the stipend, we'll pay all the tuition for a full year of graduate level study if you sign up with MCC for 5 more years. 5 years. We took the deal, and I went to Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, where I was actually put on a track to study entomology, become a lab specialist in entomology. I learned pretty quickly that that's not what I wanted to do, but that helped focus me on public health work. Along the way, I also got another scholarship, which we were then able to negotiate our deal with MCC to cut it down to 3 years. And that second term, and that schooling increased my shell. See that shell increased a little bit. And we went back to Congo then for another 3 years. This time, we went to an American Baptist mission station, Banga, where I helped develop an integrated public health program. Now here I'm going to insert a parenthesis and give you a 2-minute course in public health. Now, if you pay attention to this, you'll become a public health specialist. And you will know what primary health care means. Any disease can be diagrammed as 4 parts: entry into the body, incubation in the body, exiting from the body, and transmission to another victim. Take malaria, for example. You get malaria when you're bitten by an infected mosquito who sucks your blood, but at the same time it injects a bit of saliva in you too that contains the malaria parasite. That's how it gets into the body. The malaria parasite incubates, grows in blood cells, bursts the blood cells, and then goes into more blood cells, and pretty soon you have chills, fever resulting from these bursting corpuscles, which can kill you. If it doesn't kill you, then another mosquito, non-infected, can come along, suck out the infected blood, and transmit it to someone else. Notice there's a special Gary Larson cartoon who says, "Pull out, Betty, you hit an artery." But this cycle goes round and round and round until more and more people get malaria. And the only way to combat that is you've got to break the cycle somewhere in one of these four corners. And that's what primary healthcare does. It breaks the cycle in four corners. Down here, this is the corner for curative care. In other words, curative care is a primary healthcare action. Take your sick child to the health center, get a chloroquine treatment or a quinine treatment, and kill the parasite in the body. But don't take too much quinine or you'll kill the child. You know, it's a battle between killing the parasite and killing the host. If you do that, then you'll prevent the parasite from exiting and from being transmitted. Up atop here, we have preventive measures. How do you prevent the disease? Well, over here, we have what we call internal prevention. It doesn't prevent the mosquito from biting you, but it prevents the malaria parasites from getting situated in the malaria corpuscles. There are medicines you can take, medicines that I take while I'm traveling to Congo to prevent malaria. Doesn't prevent me from getting bitten, but prevents the malaria from getting established. On the other side, there's external prevention, like a bed net, which actually prevents a malaria mosquito from biting you. Now, you might think that bed nets are old-fashioned. Bed nets are really cutting edge nowadays. We have bed nets that are insecticide impregnated. In other words, the threads, the material of the bed net has an insecticide in it that's not harmful to humans, but it's harmful to parasites. And if we get those into a home, that'll cut down malaria by 2/3. Incredible. And if we take prevention further, not just one household, but put it in all the households of a community, then we call it promotive healthcare, promotional healthcare. And if you get bed nets in 80% of the households in a community, those 80 households will protect the other 20 households that don't have bed nets. So primary health care consists of curative care, preventive care, and promotive care. The same thing for every tropical disease. You just have to figure out what the right balance is between those. Sometimes it's the curative that's the most important. Sometimes it's the preventive that's the most important. So now you're an expert in primary health care. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Back to the story. What we were doing was developing these preventive, promotive, curative care throughout a geographic area, sort of like a county. Think of this is Vanga Health Zone. Think of it as Rockingham County. You know, in the center of Vanga Health Zone, there's the Vanga Hospital, owned and operated by the Baptists. And surrounding, there are dispensaries run by the Catholics, the Protestants, and the government. We were working with all of them to create a collaboration. Most of the work was done by bicycle. We did get a couple motorcycles from MCC, which helped in that work. It included improving the curative care, the preventive care, and the promotive care. So Vanga, this was back in the early 70s. I was there 76 to 79. Became one of the first health zones, kind of a pilot health zone in Congo. There were about a half a dozen of these that were developing independently throughout Congo. And that's when our second child, Jennifer, was born. At the end of that term, that was after 7 years with MCC, I decided I wanted to do a doctorate in international health and went to Tulane University. And again, increased my shell a bit. Just as I was finishing up my doctoral studies at Tulane, I got a call from the United States Agency for International Development, CHASA, saying, we've got a deal for you. We're developing a project to fund 50 bangas all across Congo. Will you come back to Congo and manage that project for us? That was a deal I couldn't refuse. And so we went back to Congo. This time I was hired by the US government, for taxpayer money, for 10 years to manage this national project to create 50 health zones across Congo. Now, issue there was that Congo actually had 4 competing health systems. There was the government system with its hospitals and dispensaries. The Catholics had their system. They had about 80 hospitals and several thousand dispensaries. The Protestants had 60 hospitals and several thousand dispensaries. And private industry had several hundred that had their own system of hospitals, all of them working independently of each other. And that's represented by all these little dots on the map. Each one of those represents a hospital. You know, when we talk about public-private, we think of public as being not for profit, and private is for profit. But then where do you put the faith-based hospitals? They're private, but they're not for profit. And they often get overlooked. You know, when the big donors are sitting around the table and talk about private and public collaboration, they very rarely think about the faith-based groups. And yet in Congo, it was the faith-based hospitals that were providing 40% of the health care across that country, particularly in the rural areas of the country. What the Congo government, Congo Ministry of Health, decided was that they would encourage a collaboration with the faith-based groups to work with them and create a united system. So where the faith-based, as private, could also help the government manage the system. And that was the challenge of what we were doing. There were 3 basic principles of the strategy. The first was to adopt a comprehensive approach for primary health care. You know what that is? You're experts in that now. The second is to develop decentralized health zones around functional hospitals, geographically defined, like county health systems. And the third was to nurture partnerships with, particularly with the church hospitals, to have them manage those health zones on behalf of the government. It's a very unusual collaboration, but it worked unusually well. Such that I was hired by USAID to work out of the offices of the Protestant Church of Congo. This is the Église du Christ au Zaïre. They were the managers of this project on behalf of the Ministry of Health. So having a church group manage this large multi-million-dollar project on behalf of the government was very unusual, but was a good fit for Congo. So our project, which we called SANRU, SANRU is short for Santé Rurale, rural health, SANRU. But we started with those pilot places like Vanga to encourage them to develop their work as health zones. The government came out with a revision of creating 300 health zones across Congo. But they did not try to define those health zones from the top down, like has been done in other countries. They allowed them to percolate from the bottom up. And that's what our SANRU project did. We provided assistance to any hospital, functioning hospital, Catholic, Protestant, government, that wanted to create a health zone and encouraged them to develop that over a period of a year or so. After 3 years of work, the health zones started bumping up against each other. And only then was it necessary to do a delimitation, we called it, to geographically divide health zones to keep them to distinguish who was working where. In Congo, the question wasn't so much, no, I want to work there rather than you. It was rather, okay, I'll have to work there because there's a big geographic empty space there that no one else is covering. From there, this slide to this slide took 2 years to do that delimitation process, just to give you a scale of how long this kind of work took. By the end of the Sanru 2 project, we upgraded to a vision of 100 zones. There were 306 health zones across Congo, and Sanru contributed to creating 100 of those health zones. The health zone remains the building block of healthcare in Congo today. At the hospital level, reaching distant villages by boat, bicycle, vaccination programs or vitamin A programs, BedNet programs. I shall do a bit more. And our third child arrived. Then in 1991, September of 1991, things fell apart in Congo. The military asked for a $100 a month raise. Mobutu refused, and so the army took it out by looting the downtown area of Kinshasa, pretty much destroying it. The looting continued. It went out through the whole city, and immediately embassies closed projects and evacuated their personnel. That's when we parachuted into Harrisonburg so that our kids could get into EMHS school. And I began working as a freelance consultant. Over the next 9 years, I worked in 20 different countries, but I never went back to Congo. I did a lot of work in Liberia and in Haiti, working with the ministries of health there to try to decentralize the health systems of those countries. So sometimes I worked with the World Bank, USAID, or large NGOs. I did a lot of work with CARE, Save the Children, you name the NGO, World Vision, and I've worked World Neighbors, I've worked with them. And my shell became the shape of Africa. So what happened in Congo? Well, very quickly, Congo went through a period of 12 years of unrest and 2 major wars. There's one point of time when rebel groups controlled half of the country, as you see on the map there. By 2000, however, things were settling down, and the US government reopened their embassy and Agency for International Development in Congo, and again came to me, Frank, we have another deal for you. We've got, since your project, Sanru project, was shut down unexpectedly, we have the right to reopen that project without putting it out for international bid. So all you have to do, here's $25 million. All you have to do is find a group in the United States who can manage that money in collaboration with the Protestant Church of Congo, and it's yours. And so we did that. As you'll see, that project concentrated its work in the government-held area, but also worked in the rebel-held area. We had personnel flying in with Missionary Aviation Fellowship, if you know that group, flying in across the country to work with health zones that were in rebel-controlled areas. The health zone, even without the Sanru project for 9 years, had remained viable as a structure to build it. We found a group in New Windsor, Maryland, called Interchurch Medical Assistance, near a cow pasture. They had about a dozen employees, and they were doing mainly donated medicines. They're actually a consortium of Protestant development agencies. MCC was a member of Interchurch Medical Assistance. We got them to take the leap of managing the Sanru 3 project. And it worked out tremendously well for them. They changed their focus, and they are now known as one of the specialist organizations for health system building in Congo. From 2003 to 2011, Sanru 3 project evolved into a portfolio of a half a dozen projects with funding from Global Fund, from Gavi, from the World Bank, Abbott Fund. So Gavi is the vaccination program that's funded in part by the Gates Foundation. As part of the group that I worked with. In 2011, Sanru became so big that it needed to transform itself to become an NGO, so that the money wouldn't have to go through IMA anymore. It could go directly to Sanru. Since 2011, Sanru is now managing over a dozen projects that provide assistance to every health zone. We're now 518 health zones in Congo, to every health zone in the country, to the tune of about $50 million a year flow through the Sanru system. Sanru has Congolese leadership. There's a team of 300 people who work for Sanru, all Congolese. The Congo Sanru shell has grown even bigger than me and continues today under the banner of Sanru and its motto, Health for All and Bio. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baer. We don't have time for questions, but if you'll stick around a little bit afterwards and you want to ask Dr. Baer a question, please do so. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you so much for that fascinating presentation. We are adjourned. Have a great rest of your week.
It's great.
Yeah.
1970 at Goshen College. I was in Mary Oyer's fine arts class.
Oh, okay.
And I said, I don't want to write a paper about Frank Lloyd Wright or Le Corbusier. Can I build a scale model? Sure. I did that.
Yeah. Is she 98 now?
And she said, great, and I give you for that midterm. I said, I don't need that. Now I can die and go to heaven. I'm afraid I never gave you a good enough grade for that. Wonderful.
She's a wonder.
Wonderful report.
Can I get your mic off of you?
Mike.
Yes.
So can I take the mic off yourself so it's less awkward if I take it?